Lost in translation. Oncair extended its ocular stalks towards the black and white creature masticating fibrous grass. What is it? The first Latan trembled pride. It is a panda. We grew it from the only viable genetic sequence remaining on the derelict human archive ship. The humans will be very happy that we give them the panda as a welcome gift in 8 rotations. Recycling vents around the edges of the atmospheric barrier circulated the nitrogen-oxygen atmospheric mix and a curious array of chemical signatures from the unfamiliar flora. The enclosure and additional residential hall had been constructed at what some deemed a lavish expense in the name of another tedious first contact. The panda rolled on the ground until all 4 limbs waved in the air. Oncair settled on its pods. What does a panda do? The first Latan quivered knowledgeable. Our translation of human writing is incomplete, but the instruction module indicates that the panda eats, shoots, and leaves. Ah, a formidable creature. Oncair approached the panda with pods extended, cilials at rest. Greetings, panda. I am Oncair, second Latan in service to the Merpswick's Gel Center. May your pods never tangle in anxious thought. It repeated the greeting in Ugailt, the vibratory thrumming of the tst, and as a puff of Hunwa passive communication spores. The panda extruded a thick green and brown mass from the end opposite its mastication. Oncair sucked in its ocular stalks and thickened its membrane. When the mass did not detonate, Oncair extended a singular stalk towards its superior. The first Latan burbled acknowledgement. Unfortunately, it is a lesser sentient. Oncair extended the rest of its stalks. And the substance? That is the waste product of the panda's consumption of bamboos. The first Latan extended a glistening ochre pod towards the plot of tall grasses. We formulated the bamboos with information gathered from the human botanical archives. Oncair had absorbed the human's quaint botanical files. This bamboos lacks awareness. Why am I here? Human records indicate the panda is extinct on the human homeworld. They will reward our supreme gift with favorable trade conditions for their heavy metals. You will ensure a steady supply of bamboos for the panda. Oncair undulated confusion. I am the senior botanical liaison to the Hunwa embassy. The first Latan extended 2 pods to the base of Oncair's ocular stalks. Exactly. But this bamboos does not even recognize the panda's assaults. No matter. Oncair's pods tangled. I communicate with plants, not grow them. I trust in your expertise. With that, the first Latan slithered through the atmospheric barrier. The panda rolled onto the mass of gooey waste and promptly entered a state of lessened metabolic activity. Oncair coiled resignation. It retracted its ocular stalks and slithered after its superior. Oncair knew 42 ways to promote positive and mutually fulfilling relationships with an array of sentient species. It spent the first quarter of its defined corporeal existence developing an open and empathic consciousness with the known. After 2 rotations, it had developed a notable dislike for the panda. The creature appeared to have no interests beyond consuming bamboos, creating waste, and spending extended periods in a reduced metabolic state. It preferred Oncair's carefully tended hypergrown bamboos to the fibrous mature flora, and it had a prodigious appetite. The first Latan dismissed Oncair's concerns. You will manage. They slithered together through the flowstone formation of the meditation garden. Oncair preferred its time under a proper burnt umber sky. The yellow sun and blue sky of the panda's enclosure had begun to feel strangely, uncomfortably alien. The panda metabolizes less than 20% of its intake of bamboos. The Bantans say it is possible to make the panda's digestion more efficient, thereby reducing its nutritive intake and allowing me more time for my usual duties. The first Lertan quivered, knowledgeable. Then it will be a Merpswitz panda, not a human panda. Then the Bantans can improve the nutritive value of the bamboos itself. It must be human bamboos, grown human ways. Onker twirled desperate hope. But I am to curate an art exchange with the Hunhua embassy and create a visual interface for the Zit Forerunner program. May I delegate the panda to a third or fourth Lertan? The first Lertan plopped denial. A change of caretakers might anger the panda. You will manage. The Hunhua Grove provided equally ineffectual support. The bushy ambassador of branches puffed soothing pollens in Onker's direction. Think of all the amazing things Onker would learn working with the panda. Onker blorped and stroked the purring black moss around it. It has a calcified internal support system that has pierced its membrane. The Bartans insist the structure is part of the panda's genetic coding, which is patently ridiculous. I spend more time tending to the panda's dietary needs than I do on my duties as second Lertan. Another puff, this time with a hint of buoyant affection. The first Lertan must have great investment in the worth of Onker's chlorophyll to entrust such a duty to it. Onker's flattened sarcasm. After 4 rotations of planting, observing, quabbling, and replanting, Onker felt decidedly un-Lertan. The translation of the human tongue might well have been in error. The panda no longer appeared as formidable as Onker first thought, unless one counted the havoc it wreaked upon the fibrous grass. It still could not fathom what to do with the panda's excessive waste material. Piles of it littered the enclosure. The waste emitted a pleasant chemical signature, yet panda was as likely to roll in it as it was to ignore it completely. Maybe the panda instinctively used the waste material as a form of camouflage to hide from natural predators. Maybe other creatures did not consume the panda for fear of contracting its stupidity. Onker extended and retracted its ocular stalks thoughtfully. If it could not change its Lertan duties, it would have to change the panda. Onker could, reluctantly, tolerate an environment rich in nitrogen and oxygen, but research indicated the panda would not survive a proper methane-chlorine atmosphere. The humans apparently suffered under the same deficit, a most un-Lertan awareness. Onker noted the lapse, one of several of late, and its need for corrective gelling. What about protecting against the atmosphere? Onker slithered out of the enclosure and returned a short time later with an emergency containment bubble. By then, the panda had lowered its metabolism. Typical. Another un-Lertan awareness. Onker draped the bubble over the panda. The membrane settled over and around the creature's bulk like flowstone. It made certain the bubble had a suitable atmospheric sample for replication, then adjusted the controls to allow for non-gaseous interactions. It prodded the panda with one pod. Panda? Panda? You must move. The creature continued to make low noises, indicative of its state. Onker poked the panda again, this time with 2 pods, in places not matted with waste product. The creature's fur felt like Hunhua moss. Panda, I respectfully request that you move. The panda shuddered and opened its ocular orbs. A pink orifice tentacle slid over its calcified protrusions as it lumbered upright and began to manipulate one of its 2 swiveling audio organs with a front limb. The bubble completely enclosed the creature in a spherical amber membrane. The panda did not appear concerned. Onker bounced authority. Panda, you are now properly contained to allow for mobility. The bubble will prevent all respiratory atmospheric exposure while still allowing you to interact with the environment. The panda rolled onto all 4 limbs and disappeared into the plot of bamboos. The stalks passed in and out of the membrane without disturbing a leaf. Onker trembled pride. The Pandar could cross the enclosure's atmospheric barrier, and it follow on embassy rounds. The exposure to different races might even encourage an increase in the Pandar's cognition. Oncare extended its pods, cilials at rest. Pandar, I request that you follow me. I have a scheduled interface at the ZT embassy. The wet cracking of the creature's mastication rippled over Oncare's membrane. It coiled resignation and retracted its ocular stalks, wondering if the Pandar had cognition to increase. The answer was not cognition, but appetite. Oncare removed the growth pads to its second gel residence and brought a supply of tender stalk segments to the enclosure each rotation. It presented stalks in order of need, shorter pieces to facilitate mobilization, longer pieces to placate the Pandar when they reached a given destination. It did not take the Pandar long to learn that if it wanted to eat, it had to follow Oncare. Trembling pride and elongating efficiency, Oncare spent 2 full rotations catching up on its duties as second Latan. The ZT interface blossomed to fruition. The Hunhua Art Exchange engaged sentience from 19 separate systems, and through it all, the Pandar followed, masticated, and extruded. The ambassadors seemed fascinated with the Pandar. They collected in the common areas of the ambassadorial campus to watch Oncare lead the creature around. Bright leaves and feathers swayed enthusiasm. Spores burst red vegetative queries. Prisms reflected substratums of questioning light. Will the humans also extrude? Adoration limbs limited range. Holographic reference. Holographic reference. Eat, yes? Oncare decided against leaving its charge unattended. The first Latan curled pleasure at Oncare's resourcefulness. I knew you would find a way to assimilate the Pandar's care into your scheduled duties. They pooled together in the meditation garden beneath a flowstone overhang, while the Pandar masticated supine in its bubble. Oncare hoped the Pandar appreciated the rightness of a sky with chards and rempults in full phase. It tossed its charge another segment of bamboos. The Pandar's fur was clean and smooth, an unanticipated benefit of the current feeding program. It has proven a most enlightening experience. The humans will be pleased that their new Pandar has been so readily accepted by the other embassies. Oncare trembled pride. Gratitude to you, First Latan. The humans shall grant the Merpswick's preferred trade status, and I shall receive favourable notice from the Grand Gel. Oncare extended all of its eye stalks. Pardon? The first Latan curled pods around Oncare's ocular stalks, and you as well. The Pandar rolled onto its waist to retrieve the next piece of bamboos. On arrival day, Oncare made a special point to chemwash its charge's fur. Even with blended frustration of political excess, Oncare wanted to make a good impression. After reinflating the bubble and a minimal first feeding, an extrusion of waste at the presentation would no doubt prove disastrous, perhaps even fatal. Oncare slithered to its first gel residence with a stop to pick up a fresh supply of bamboos. Where went the bamboos, so went the Pandar. Oncare dribbled mirth and hurried on its way. The first Latan contacted Oncare repeatedly. Was the Pandar prepared? Yes, of course. And the enclosure? Oncare contacted the enclosure's droids on a separate wavelength and set them to the task before assuring the first Latan that everything was complete. What about bamboos? Did Oncare have extra bamboos to keep its charge occupied, already pouched? Did it think a sedative would be needed so the Pandar would not startle and attack? Oncare peeled exasperation, yet answered with a Latan's calm assurance that no sedative would be needed. Not for the Pandar, anyway. Oncare slithered into the residence and darkened the entrance to indicate gel time. It had spent far too little time at the first gel residence and missed the meditations curled on the walls, the scent of ripe flurg. Really, flurg made a gel residence a home. It slithered into the centerpiece and unwound calm thought. Time to prepare itself for the humans. Let the first Latan slurp selfish and tremble pride. Oncare served the Merpswick's gel center and trembled pride at its own accomplishments. Someday other Merpswicks would as well. The pit warmed to Oncare's stillness and began to corrective gel. Feathered piece. Onker received a contact. It continued to gel. Another contact, and it refused with a statement of gel time. Moments later, another contact came through on the first Latan's singular wavelength. The human transport has entered the lower atmosphere. Why aren't you at the vestibule? Where is the panda? Onker blobbed surprise. It slithered out of the pit and lunged for the observation wall. No! It had overgelled. I'm decontaminating an elimination area, and I will be there shortly. Elimination in your first gel residence? Onker brought up viewer wavelengths for Human Embassy's enclosure. It could not find the panda. It shifted to different viewers. Nothing. No signs of a disturbance or a fight. A clean enclosure, but no panda. Onker puckered fear. I had hoped to engage the panda's interests with further cultural exchange. We will be there soon. Do not disappoint me, second Latan Onker, or you will lose more than your ranking. No corrective gel could strip away Onker's un-Latan awareness. It called for mobilization and met the automated unit along the glide path. Where was the panda? Had Onker been taken in by the creature's ruse of incompetence? Was it even now stalking the ambassadorial campus, or worse, the pits of the Grand Gel? Was this all an elaborate human plot to allow their agent of destruction inside Merpswick's defences? Onker's pods tangled. Puckered fear. Puckered fear. At the Human Embassy, Onker rushed into the pristine enclosure. Panda! Panda, I have bamboo! Panda! Bamboos! No panda, only alien vegetation swaying in the circulated air. It hurried to the observation wall and brought up the viewer wavelengths. It scanned back time until it found the panda in its containment bubble, mobilizing through the enclosure's atmospheric boundary in reverse. The creature mobilized backwards to the edges of where the growth pads had been, then snuffled over to a few bits of bamboos on the floor. Onker had been undone by trembled pride. The panda's appetite had led it to seek bamboos outside the enclosure. Onker had been in such a hurry to corrective gel, it misjudged the creature's metabolism. The first Latan made contact once more. The humans have landed! Where are you? What have you done with the panda? Puckered fear. Onker muted the inquiry and forward-timed the outside viewers. The panda mobilized away from the Human Embassy to the common grounds. Zzzt Courier waved 3 tentacles in excited recognition before heading into its embassy. Onker undulated confusion, twirled desperate hope. The Zzzt Couriers were particular about their duties and never varied their scheduled routes. Judging by the time marker, this courier had finished its route, so the panda had to be close. The Hunhua wavelength activated. An automated voice came through. Second Latan, are you available? Your panda is eating one of our staff. Should we poison? Please advise. Onker knotted panic. It imagined it could identify the Hunhua spores of alarm. It slithered out of the enclosure as fast as it could. Do nothing! I will be there momentarily! At the Hunhua Embassy, 12 different species coiled and withered at the entrance. From inside the vestibule came the sounds of squealing moss, rustling leaves, and determined mastication. The ambassador of branches puffed fear at Onker. The panda's reputation was no lie. Onker had to stop the panda before the victim needed grafting. Onker pulled out short lengths of bamboos and slithered into the vestibule, where the panda sat stripping leaves from a tall grass hunhua. The top of the starfish stalks had been chewed away, leaving nothing but moist stubs. Panda, cease your consumption. I have fresh bamboos. The panda made no response. Onker struck it over the head with the bamboos, and the panda stopped eating long enough to look at Onker. At the sight of the bamboos, it dropped the staffer and pulled Onker's pod forwards. Onker released the bamboos and helped the Hunhua drag the wounded staffer away, while the panda was distracted. The bushy ambassador released agitated pollen bursts. Now it understood why Onker made offerings of the dead to the panda. It was a beast, a monster. Should the Hunhua seal their embassy against another attack? Would the humans demand further sacrifice to satisfy the panda's terrible hunger? Onker vibrated relief. I don't think so, but it is best not to speak of this until I have had the opportunity to confer with the panda. Should the ambassador of branches file a formal report with the first Lertan? No need for that. You have my word by soil and sun that the Pandar shall not trouble the Hunwar again. Now, if I may ask your pardon. Onker backed out of the vestibule, laying segments of bamboos as it went. The Pandar followed, pausing to consume each one. Onker contacted the first Lertan, who answered immediately. Your insults to the human embassy shall not go unreported. We were forced to greet them without our intended gift of welcome, and for that, escort them to the enclosure. I will be there with the Pandar. Your lack of planning and poor... Onker continued to drop bamboos in front of the Pandar at widening intervals to encourage interest in mobilization. My skills are not in question in this discussion. Your willingness to make a favorable presentation to the human embassy is. Escort them to the enclosure. The first Lertan was silent a moment. Your estimation had better be correct. The contact snapped closed, and Onker slimed relief to the known. One stalk at a time, Onker coaxed the Pandar across the common areas and back into the enclosure. It instructed the drones to retrieve the bamboo's growth pads, spilled the remaining bamboos onto the floor, and deflated the Pandar's bubble. It then settled down to compose a request to build a physical enclosure for the formidable Pandar for reasons of sentient safety. It finished the request as the official mobilization arrived. The unit merged with the atmospheric barrier, the connection point resolved, and the first Lertan escorted the human embassy and a surrounding of third and fourth Lertans into the enclosure. At the sight of Onker, the first Lertan striated outrage, yet kept all ocular stalks extended. It slithered to one side. Captain Louise, Human Embassy, it said, and strange metallic sounds came from a translator unit attached to one pod. I present to you, second Lertan, Onker, and our privileged gift of welcome to you. Onker extended its pods, cilials at rest. Welcome, Human Embassy. The Pandar lay supine and masticated with single-minded intent. The humans stood motionless. 12 in all, they were covered in identical partial containments, all the same distasteful blue. The one with the darkest membrane opened its head orifice, closed it, lifted an upper limb towards the Pandar. It made noises at the other humans. They made noises back, quick and high, alone and together. Some shaped their orifices up, some down. Onker spun sympathy. The humans had calcified protrusions, similar to the Pandars. A smaller human shook its head, made a soft sound, and its ocular orbs began to leak. It brought its two upper limbs up to its head orifice, then turned its back to Onker. A threat? No, the human with the darkest membrane set its limb around the smallest one in what appeared to be a recognition of some sort. A tall human began to leak in a similar manner, and a round one. Onker undulated confusion. Had it offended? The first Lertan extended and retracted its ocular stalks, thoughtful at Onker, then made a deliberate gesture towards the middle section of the one who raised its limb. Your translator, Captain Louise. At the strange metallic sounds, the human fumbled at its middle section and produced a translator. The human made strange noises, and the translator said, Greetings! The first Lertan considered Onker with all ocular stalks, then signalled to a fourth Lertan. The underling slithered over to Onker, presented a translator, and backed away. Onker hung the translator from an ocular stalk. Greetings, Captain Louise. The human brought a limb to its orifice and made a sharp noise. Is that a correct panda? The monotone translator voice had no emotion, but the human exhibited none of the 98 recognized indications of hostility. Onker quivered, knowledgeable. It is a human panda, yes. The human focused both ocular orbs on the Pandar. It made another sharp sound, wiped leakage from its ocular orbs. We have not seen a human Pandar in significant length of human measurement of time. Exclamation of surprise and wonderment. Onker trembled pride. Do not tangle your pods in anxious thought. I will provide your nutritional specialists instruction on the care and harvest of bamboos. The Pandar eats shoots and leaves. The Pandar extruded waste and rolled on top of it. Author's note. Where do you get your ideas? From conversations with my family. My partner, oldest son, and I were running errands, and the old story about how a panda eats shoots and leaves came up. One-liners followed fast and furious, and I began to wonder out loud about what aliens might think when they encountered a panda for the first time, if that is all anyone knew about it. Ah, a formidable creature. I don't often write science fiction, but sometimes a story hits that sweet spot, and I laugh every time. There you go, Sandra. Hope that's okay for you. This is a cracker, by the way. This is one of your very best. Thank you for asking me to read it.